Hello, and thanks for joining us. My name is Scott Masteller, and I'm happy to be here with Sean Bos, the one of the founding partners of Crowd React Media. They have just put together their annual study. It's got a lot of great information, the State of Sports Media 2024, and we're going to dive into a couple of the key findings from this really great presentation. Sean, first of all, just for people who are, checking this out, talk about how you put the study together, how you went and found people to engage with.
Cool. So we have a little practice doing this. This is our third installment of the State of Sports Media. And so we asked over 500 sports fans across the country as to their daily sports media preferences. And we surveyed multiple age groups, all ethnicities. Basically, it's just kind of an inclusive survey. And your requirement, so you had to be a sports fan and you have to live in America.
Okay, that works. When you go through this, there obviously is just a wealth of information. But to start off, just give me, from your perspective, three immediate takeaways from what you learned as this compares to other studies you've done.
Right. So first off, there's good and bad news for terrestrial formats. So let's start off with a little bit of the bad news. There has been a significant shift towards streaming as cable figures are somewhat depressed from last year's results, a 10-point dip, actually. This signifies a fundamental change in viewing preferences, especially with the disputes with Spectrum and Dish and ESPN pushing many sports fans towards cord cutting. The second takeaway would be that a third of sports betting audiences are actively betting, while more than half of the younger age demos are actively betting on sports. This translates into nearly half of younger demographics tuning into betting related media. And as you can see, there's a demonstrable shift in the integration of this content into traditional sports media. And the third takeaway happens to be a majority of sports audiences are listening to sports audio programming. 2/3 of the younger demographic are doing so. And the good news for terrestrial formats is that AM/FM radio still rules the roost. It is king of audio when it comes to sports audio, despite the proliferation of digital audio platforms. So yeah, radio is really strong.
So a couple of areas we can get into. One is just what I call the explosion in social media, just in the overall sports media landscape.
Mhm.
Whenever there is a major sporting event, as soon as it's over, it's always in the past, people will just want to gravitate to like ESPN.com to read information. But now people, I think, are gravitating to the websites where there's immediate reaction. So just give a little sense about the role of social media in the sports media landscape, and really with, as what we're talking about, fans actively participating.
Yep. And social media gives that fan a chance to participate in sports news. And so this ranges from fan generated content, from podcasts to YouTube channels to more kind of establishment media. And there's just the dynamic interplay between all these various platforms. And it's really about capitalizing on a strategy that really works for you and your audience. But there's also a lot of opportunities to grow here as well in this space.
Um, the shift from cable to streaming is now really accelerating.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
really becoming a major factor. Give us a sense of where this is all going. We see in the NFL contract, in the NBA contract,
Hmm.
that there's an impact here. I
Hmm.
would think this is only going to continue to become more and more of a factor.
As we discussed in the key takeaways, that 10-point dip from last time in streaming coming in really strong. I mean, you have all these streaming networks that are basically just vacuuming up all these various leagues, even niche leagues, just all the divisions of college sports and obscure college sports. And so, I don't know, people are gravitating towards these platforms that not only have like kind of like these niche sports, but also like the heavy hitting sports, like the footballs and the basketballs and whatnot of the world. And I don't know, it's interesting because is that a lot of it plays on the traditional broadcast methods of cable, and they're adapting that to streaming, and they're doing an increasingly good job of it. Is that, well, they haven't worked out all the kinks of streaming live. They're getting better at it, and I believe the product will continue to get better.
One of the things I find interesting is the dynamic between younger audiences and older audiences
Hmm.
and what they're looking for in 2024 and what they'll be looking for next year. Give us a little perspective on how that's going to impact the entire process.
Well, the older demographics, um, they're kind of not necessarily stuck in their ways, but they're pretty consistent year on end between the last two state of sports media and this state of sports media. It's really the younger demographics that are embracing technology in such a way that the vast majority of younger demographics say that engaging with sports media, getting the latest information from their favorite sports leagues and teams is an important part of their day. And I don't know, that's a departure from how it was in the past, where it was kind of a passing hobby. Now it's very much kind of like an active part of one's day that's been habituated among audiences.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there because, there still is the reality, especially on the video side, that live play by play is worth a lot.
Yeah.
And you saw that in the NBA rights deal, in the
Yeah.
NFL rights deal, and you'll continue to see that. But at the same point, there was a thirst by consumers. I know in my experience working with a sports radio station in Philadelphia, they just want to talk Eagles all the time. So
Right.
I think it becomes two different strategies you have to have. One
Right.
is with play by play, and the other is without, regardless of whatever the platform is.
Right. So to give you're talking about play by play, the live sport is the bread and butter of the sports media industry. It just is. The games themselves in full. And this is not necessarily the case with all other media, like music media. You can see the trends, especially on TikTok, is that songs are being made more to cater to that 30-second, minute long clip of a song and not necessarily the entire thing. And like sports highlights are very important and people love sports highlights. The thing is, but they want the whole thing, they want the whole game. And so that's, I think, what makes sports be able to weather all these kind of technological and social changes, to be honest with you.
Well, I think you'll see too that when there's a remarkable play in a football game, a basketball game, or a baseball game, and then it goes to social media
Hmm.
or it becomes a YouTube thing. I
Hmm.
mean, the amount of people consuming that clip
Hmm.
over and over and over is
Yep.
something that I don't think we've seen before. And now it's just kind of the status quo. So, one of the things that is interesting, I think, to get your take on, it used to be it was just about the one team you care about.
Right.
I'm a fan of whatever that team is. So sports loyalty, but I get the sense now that it goes beyond that. I mean, look at,
Hmm.
the just completed World Series with Freddie Freeman hitting 4 home runs in 4 consecutive games.
Right.
So how does that whole, approach play into the future of where sports media is going to go? Because obviously we have better technology to give us more access to
Hmm.
content.
Yep. And that with content, you get like a heightened understanding of the game with tactical analysis and just way more information for the consumer to kind of dig their teeth into their favorite sports leagues. And it becomes, yes, not necessarily just following your favorite sports teams, but even on a more granular level, is that what you're talking about? Freddie Freeman is now a brand. He's not just a
Yes.
player for the Dodgers, he is a sports brand. And that's increasingly become the case, especially among younger demos, is they're not necessarily following just teams, they're following individuals and individual social media platforms. And oftentimes the individuals are more important than the teams in regards to content consumption.
Yeah, I think you're right. And if you look at, I mean, the NBA has done a great job with that over the years. They really were the first league I felt to really have a sense about all that. They were just,
Yep.
phenomenal. But now you're seeing, I mean, Patrick Mahomes and what he means to the Chiefs.
Hmm.
but what he means to the NFL, where all the media partnerships are scrambling to get games where he's going to play.
Yep.
So how does that play into the future of all this? Because I think it's going to be, always like who's the next superstar is what you're going to be thinking about.
Well, so we've seen what happened in professional sports. I would just look for NIL and college sports to really bloom over the next couple years, and that's something to keep your eye on. Regards to especially what happens with this 12 team play in with regards to the CFP final. And just like we're talking about individuals becoming brands, even at the collegiate level. And I think that's kind of where we're headed here.
So one aspect of this that's growing everywhere is the sports betting. Just,
Hmm.
more and more, and it's if you find some people that's it's like part of their daily routine now. They just, it's how they engage in sports. Um, so how has this influenced fan engagement, and what opportunities do you see from this in the future?
Yep. So the clear majority, over 80% of the sports fans we talked to said that getting the latest sports news on their favorite leagues and teams was an important part of the day. And not only that, is that they pay attention to those teams throughout the year. This is beyond the regular season into the off season, where usually there was a kind of like a dead period during the calendar year. Not anymore. It honestly seems like the speculation, gossip, palace intrigue ramps up during the off season. So just the engagement is just being maximized here.
I always call it, the soap opera of sports and
Yeah,
the different personalities. And
yeah,
you'll
totally.
see, based on comments that some people make in interviews, they go viral all of a sudden,
Hmm.
and everybody is reacting to what, that person, say it was Jerry Jones of the Cowboys, what he had to say, and how that team is trying to figure out what they're going to do next. So I think you're right. So to close this out and, encourage people to really review this data, but how can media organizations leverage this information from your findings to better tailor their strategic plans for the future?
I would just say put your content, package your content in as many platforms as possible and have a way to kind of link back to your, I don't know, original signal, your keystone programming, because they'll find you if it's about their team and you have something interesting to say about their team or their favorite sport. They will find you. They are rabid out there. It is just, and I'm not using that term lightly. It's just like this,
No,
sports
they
audiences
are.
are literally rabid.
I think you raised a great point, Sean, because I know when I've said in focus groups, with what we'll call, and my background primarily is radio broadcasting, which is now audio. But
Mhm.
if you're a primary listener of certain, product, the product sometimes better than the people that are putting out the content. It's
Right.
just kind of the way it evolves. So
Yeah.
I encourage people to follow up with this, and they can reach out to you if they need more further information in the future. And thank you for some really great insights and perspective.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate it.